Hello, fellow travelers, and welcome to the Traversing the Stars podcast. How are my loyal listeners? Thank you for your continued support. And as always, hit that subscribe button, everybody. We have an amazing show for you because aboard the mothership is Tyler Tice. He's the writer of Day Shift, starring Jamie Foxx. Now come join me as we go traversing the stars. Hello, Mr. Tice. Thank you so much for coming to the Traversing the Stars podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Totally my pleasure, sir. So I always start off with a question of inspiration. So what inspired your love for writing and who are your earliest influences?
I don't know what inspired. I just always wanted to make movies, I guess. The first time I realized I wanted to make movies, I saw this movie called The Big Picture. It was a Christopher Guest movie with Kevin Bacon in it. Came out in like the late 80s. I saw that with my sister when I was a kid, and that's the first time I realized that people actually make movies. So ever since then, I've just wanted to be a writer, director. And at some point I worked on a movie set and I saw what the directors do, and I didn't want to do that anymore. So
if you don't mind, can you say which movie that was that turned you off directing?
It was a movie. It was actually a movie called Nightmare. I don't know. It was filmed in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
It was made by the same people who made that Roger Stone movie on Netflix. It was a horror movie. And I just watched the whole process go down. I worked as a PA, and I was like, I don't want to do this.
So if I read correctly, you studied at the University of the Arts.
Yes.
What was that experience teaching? What did that experience teach you about writing?
Well, it's the first place I ever really wrote. I was a film major, and I got there and I found out I really wasn't technically inclined. You know, this was still back in the late 90s when we were shooting on 16 millimeter and cutting film by hand. And I just didn't like it. I wasn't good with the cameras. I wasn't technically inclined, but we did have a class that we took that was called Writing for Film and Television. And I excelled in it. And so I would be like, you know, she would pick my scripts to read aloud to the class and stuff like that. So that's kind of what where I started writing was there.
Well, that's very awesome. I had a writing class once when I was in college, and the professor used one of my stories as an example of what not to do, apparently. And he was like, do you mind if I read this as an example of what not to do? I said, yes, I do mind if you read this as an example. He's like, really? I said, yes, I'm not joking. Don't read it if it's that bad.
Hey, just let him go, you know, you at least you get it out there.
That part's true. So when you're in class for writing for film and television, how does that differ from the other types of writing that you've experienced?
Well, honestly, that was my first real time. That was like my first time really writing anything. So that was my first intro to writing. So I didn't really have anything to compare it to. And I wanted to make movies, and that's kind of how I thought in my head. So that's kind of like, I don't know, it was perfect for the medium. So, and I went on later in life to you know, I've written parts of novels. I've written lots of short stories. I did stand up for a long time. So I've done a lot of other writing. It was just, but my first intro to writing was always screenwriting. And people that have read my fiction and whatnot always can tell that I started out screenwriting. They
So you did stand up. What was that experience like for you? How long did you do it for? And are you still doing it?
Oh, no, I'm not doing it at all. I probably did it for like 2 years. It was a lot of fun at the time, and then it stopped being fun.
Did you kill when you were up there, or did you have a few times when you got like the crickets?
Oh, both, yeah. Both. When I first started, you know, my first time on stage, I practiced for so long that I crushed it. I got up on stage. I went to an open mic in Philadelphia where I went to college. So I had a bunch of college friends there, and I had this bit I've been practicing for months, and I got it perfect. I crushed it. And then the first couple of times I did really good, and then I bombed horribly. And I feel like just doing so good at the beginning made it even worse.
Did you know why the next time bombed? Was it an audience thing? Do you think the jokes were just stale?
The jokes don't land. Sometimes the audience isn't right. Sometimes don't have the right delivery. It's a myriad of things. You know?
So when you're writing comedy in your scripts, because which we'll go over Day Shift, definitely has a lot of comedy in it. When you're writing comedy, are you like, how do you go about that in the script? I mean, are you intentionally pushing? It's like, I have an idea to put a comedy scene in here, or does it just kind of come out of the scenes organically?
Comes out of the scenes organically, always.
Have you can you force comedy into a situation, or does it have to just kind of?
I feel like it has to come naturally. I guess I could be like, you know, I want to end this with something funny, but you just can't like surrounded, like I feel like you can't write a scene around a joke. This jokes have to come from the scene.
Mm. So you're the writer of the new film called Day Shift, which is on Netflix and is absolutely awesome. I got to watch it and I really enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you.
So what inspires creation, and is this your first screenplay that got option to film?
Yes, it's my first one, and what inspired it, I guess, was just wanting to write a movie about vampire hunters. I always like the trope of the vampire hunter, but I feel like they've never really done justice to the reason these guys are vampire hunters. You know, it was always like they were the chosen one, or it's like some like you know, they have to revenge something. Like it's, but I just wanted to make it like something that people can relate to. So it was just like they do it for money. It's a job. It's just like anything else, you know. And that's kind of the genesis of it. And at the time, I was living in the San Fernando Valley, and that's where it decided to make it take place.
So when you're going about writing a vampire movie, obviously, depending on the vampire movie that you watch, there's different rules that they follow. And sometimes they're consistent, sometimes, between movies, sometimes they're not. Whether or not I turn into a vampire, whether or not it's a chopping off the head, whether or not it's stake to the heart, that kind of thing. So you approach writing Day Shift, how do you determine which rules for vampires that you wanted to keep in the story, which ones you wanted to alter? And did you develop the rules as you wrote the story, or did you say, these are my rules, I'm not going to write a story using them?
I developed them. I mean, I had them most in the beginning, but you know, some you kind of bring along with you. The rules for it changed over time. Like that, I wrote the original screenplay, and they brought on several other writers after mine, and they changed a lot of the rules. Like I remember when I came on, I wrote a whole. The producers wanted me to write like a whole like thing of my rules, my world of vampires, and I did that, and they broke a lot of them. So it's an ever changing thing. But my vampires were a lot more. Pardon?
Are
Sorry.
you able to share which ones you changed?
I mean, he changed like you know, all like the different breeds of vampire like that. I didn't. That was JJ's idea that came in later, and then like one thing was like I never had vampires. I specifically had it that vampires don't have, or vampires do have reflections. And then they in the final, the vampires don't have reflections. I mean, it was cool the way they did it, so I don't have a problem with it. But that was just something that was, I never understood how something couldn't have a reflection. But they did it really cool, so I can't complain. Yeah, my vampires were a lot like more organic. They were just more smaller. They didn't have all the powers and everything. They weren't as strong as they were, you know, in the final version. You know.
So, what is that like for you when you have your script and it's also your baby? Then you have handed to other people and becomes their baby. Is it like a possessive feeling where it's like, no, that's my thing, or are you just like, okay, cool, I like what they did, or is it like, they're making my movie? I'm just,
Yeah, I mean, it's
exciting.
honestly just like, I don't care. They're making the movie, whatever gets it across the goalpost. You know what I mean? Like whatever writers they need to bring it on to change things and get it made, it got made. That's all I care about. And I thought it was an awesome movie at the end. So they made all the right choices. Yeah. And by the time, like I wrote Day Shift, I started writing Day Shift in 2016. And then I did so many different rewrites when, you know, like different people, different producers would come on, the director would come on, different people would come aboard, and it would be a whole new set of notes, a whole new rewrite. And then we brought it to Netflix, and then Netflix had their own notes, and it's more rewrites and several rewrites. And by the time they told me that I was they were bringing on another writer, I was ready just to let go. The last draft I wrote was in 2020 from coming up with the idea in 2016. It was just took up so much of my life. I was just ready to move on, and whatever could get the movie made, like bring it on.
So when you were conceiving the movie, one thing you also did very well in the movie was the world building. So how did you develop or conceive of the ideas of vampires living in our world? Because I think your movie has kind of like a vampire organic exists in our world than a lot of movies do, because you had them develop, they have homes, they have families, they had a system, and they have, obviously the union, all that other stuff. So how did you conceive of how they would fit into an actual world when you were developing it?
The vampires themselves, or the vampire hunters?
Vampires first.
Vampire, I mean, that's the great thing about vampires is that they live amongst us. I mean, I feel like that's one of the things that attracts people to them because it could be anybody. And I feel like those are better vampires, the ones with more human traits, because it could be anybody. And they
Mm.
do have personalities and they do have lives. And there's more to dig into there than just a mindless monster that I feel like sometimes they're portrayed as. And I feel like that's the fun. And they're these creatures that are just ancient and they have these crazy pasts and they live amongst us and we don't know who they are, but they feed off of us, which is
Yeah.
crazy too. You know, and that I feel like that's what kind of attracts people to them. Like they like I tried to make it in the movie, in my drafts at least, that it could be conceivable that if that this was real, you know, that there are vampires living amongst us and you just wouldn't know.
Mm. Yeah, I think it was really cool. And when you thought about the vampire hunters, how did you determine how they would be synced into the world? Because obviously they're doing their job and whatever, but it seems like the majority of people don't know vampires exist still in that world. So how did you kind of figure out how you would sink in the hunters into this vampire world?
Just I mean, essentially, the vampire hunters were slightly different in my scripts. They were just kind of more exterminators. You know what I mean? They kind of just it was just a fucking job. You know, we
Mm.
had this thing that was a vampire, and so we have this other thing that's a vampire hunter. You know, it just kind of and it was like one of the things was like it was imperative that you keep this world secret. That was part of the vampire hunter code. You can never tell anyone you're a vampire hunter, and that was punishable by death. I don't know if that if it still is, but that's how it used to be. So, but that's it was just like people don't want to cause a panic. Just keep the, you know, silently kill all these vampires. We don't want a world people know that there's these people hunting vampires. And that was also something in my original screenplay that was like the paranoia of these vampire hunters, that they would be found out that they are vampire hunters, so that it's
Mm.
like they live this life of paranoia. They don't go out after dark. They have crew like their homes are completely locked down. As you remember, you see Bud, he's got all the locks on his
Yeah.
house, and even his wife said when she was selling his house, she's like, we had to get rid of all the locks. Like it's a like they're paranoid individuals, and if someone finds out they are a vampire hunter, like they will be killed.
Mm. When you're writing the script, is it hard to balance the characterization and the world building at the same time?
No, not necessarily. I feel I love world building. That's my favorite part of writing. And just it's fun to, you know, build worlds and then put your characters in them and see how they interact.
So when you're writing for Bud Jablonski, who's the main character of the film and the main focus of the movie, he's a hunter, killer, and a family man.
Yes.
So was the family man aspect always a part of the story with him?
Yes. Yeah, I wrote this right after I had my first child. So I kind of had having a kid changes you. It changes your whole fucking brain chemistry. It changes how you think. It changes your everything you do. It changes what you strive for and your goals in life. And so that I wanted to write about that. I wanted to make this guy a father. And you know, it's just kind of, you know, my idea was he was a vampire hunter first, and he just got into this game, and he has children and he has a wife and he really can't get out. You know, what else is he going to do? He makes good money doing it. He lives in LA. It's expensive as hell. And you know, he's just too old to like try something else, and it's not very conducive to family life. But what's he going to do?
So as someone who's he's a hunter and a killer, how does that psychologically affect him now as a family man? Is that part, you know, can you separate the two mentally of, you know, you got to get a mindset of being this hunter, or he's killing of vampires, he lives a very dark world, then at the same time he has to come home and be somebody's dad and be somebody's husband and try to not bring that shit probably home with him
Yeah.
while he's doing this. So how does someone like that live mentally?
I think I mean for the he doesn't think of vampires as he thinks he's an exterminator. He's killing killers to him. I mean, he
Mm.
says it in the movie when they're in the car. He looks at him, he just sees dollar signs. You know, he's not like I'm out there. I mean, sure, it's a gross job and it's a bloody job, but there's lots of jobs that are gross and bloody, and he feels like he's doing a good thing. I mean, to him, he doesn't, you know, if you really sit down, all these vampires were once people, like Seth says in the
Mm.
movie. I mean, granted, they maybe made some wrong choices wanting to become a bloodsucker, but at the same time, they were people. But he doesn't think about it like that. He just
Mm.
this is a job that needs to be done, and I need to do this, and that's how I'm going to get paid, and that's how I support my kids.
So one thing I think is kind of interesting in the movie, I don't know, it was in the original script, is that there's also two good vampires in the movie.
Yeah.
That help him out later on. Was that always part of the original script?
Well, Heather was always part of the original script, but Bud becomes a vampire. He doesn't fight at the. That wasn't part of the original script.
Okay.
He becomes gets turned and Bud kills him, and that was it. he didn't come back. But Heather was always kind of a vampire that was kind of like he lived in the building with her and he got to know her really well, and he realized, and before he knew he was a vampire, and that's kind of when he realizes like, oh, they're not all terrible people.
So
She was turned against her will. She never became a familiar. She never wanted this.
So the moment he figures out that there are good vampires, so that calls him at all to reflect on all the killing he probably did of potentially perfectly good vampires that he unfortunately didn't think about whether or not he should end them or not.
Probably. He probably had a moment of self-reflection, maybe a little bit of guilt, but what are you going to do? You know, that money's spent. So.
Because I thought about it. So I don't know what's in the movie. He's obviously going after vampire, but he's not exactly doing any like research as far as what has this person done to deserve this killing, other than being the vampire.
Yeah, it's just they're a vampire, and those fangs are worth a lot of fucking money. So
Right.
fangs, you know, that's what it is. You just kind of you know, I guess it is compartmentalizing. You just realize that like this is a job that needs to be done, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to get paid, and if I don't, someone else will come along and do it, or this guy's going to go out and kill somebody.
So if there is a sequel, and if there's any word in a sequel, feel free to, I don't know, blink or like clap or something.
I hope so. It'd be cool.
If there was one, would you have him at all reflect on what he now knows about vampires given his relationship with Heather?
I haven't thought of it before, but that's actually kind of a cool idea. So I might just steal that from you.
No, that's totally okay. But at the end, you gotta say thank you, Traversing the Stars.
Yeah. But then I just don't see that. Like I don't know. You know, they're big budget fucking action comedy movies. I don't know if we want to have him taking a moment of self reflection and thinking about all the innocent lives he's taken over the years. Might be a downer.
So were the two brothers also in the original script?
Yes, yeah, they were always in the original script. Yep.
Were they going to come back later in the original? Because they had that great scene, but then they don't come back and do anything. You have to come back later.
Nope, they never come back. It's just kind of just one scene where we meet some other hunters, and they happen to be a couple Armenian brothers, and they're just badass fucking hunters, and that was it. That's the one scene they were in.
So the movie is directed by J.J. Perry. So what was it like working with him in the movie and the script?
Oh, it was awesome. Great experience, first experience in Hollywood. That guy's fucking awesome. So I don't know. He when he came along, it was like the script was different. Like I said in the beginning, it was much more of a horror comedy, I would say, like a horror dramedy almost, I would call it. So it was a lot smaller. Like the scene with the Nazarian brothers in the original script, they killed 3 vampires. And that's one of the scenes where he's like, no, we're gonna kill like 100 vampires in this scene. So he's like, figure it out. And like he would he would be in the UK. He was working on that the new Fast and Furious movie over there, and I was in New Jersey staying at my dad's house, and he would call me and 5 o'clock in the morning and be like, hey, I want a car chase. I've sent you a bunch of videos. Let's work in a car chase. So car chase. And the scene with the old lady in the beginning, that was originally like he just kind of like I said, they were like he just kind of went in and just fucking took her out real quick, and that was his day. And then in his version, he's like, no, let's have them actually fight back and forth and make it longer and put more action in it. So it was just like everything was like more action.
So when you're writing and someone gives you direction like put in a car chase, as the writer, how do you think to yourself, how do you think of how to put that in the script? Because I imagine one, because it's yours, you kind of have this like attachment to what you wrote, and 2, you got to figure out now an organic way to put in this thing where someone is inorganically adding it to your idea. So how do you think to yourself, in your head, how to plot that out?
You just got to think, where could I put a car? Like where could he be in a car where people will be chasing him? And I can't even remember for the life of me how I figured out the spot to put it or what it was before, because there's been so many drafts. But yeah, that was just what it is. It was like, oh, here I could put it here. He can get in a car here, and we can have a chase through LA.
So when you're running it, do you write chase through LA, or are you writing the details of how that chase goes through, like the daughter playing the video game during and things of that nature.
Yeah, you kind of like weave in and out between detailed and general. Same thing with like fight scenes, because they're gonna do their own thing no matter what I write. Like I'm not gonna get specific unless there's like something that needs to be specific. So you'll put the specifics in, and everything else is kind of general. Like for a fight scene, for instance, you'll start off with the specific, like certain hits, and then all of a sudden it's like, and then it breaks out into mayhem, and the Nazarian brothers kill everybody, and then you kind of like come out of it and get more detailed. Same thing with the car chase. You kind of start off with the beginning, and then you kind of they go through the streets of LA, blah blah, and then like you get more specific towards the end there for the specific things you want to add in.
So without giving away too many spoilers, how about the Wire? Was that something that you added into your script, or is that something
that was actually JJ? That was JJ's idea. That was which it was a fucking cool idea, and everybody loved it, and everyone read my script. And the script that goes out, that my reps send out around town, has that scene in it. So they all love that scene, and I have to be like, I didn't think of that scene. That was actually JJ. That was one of the first scenes he came up with. Like, I think we met on like this. Like I was, they were all out in LA, and I was in New Jersey, so we met like this, and he said that scene. He described the scene, and in the original one, when he walks through, his head gets chopped off, and the body falls forward, and there's like blood spraying out of it, and Bud pulls up his hood and covers his head, and that's what is written in the script. So this body's going down, and he's just
that's awesome.
I've read a bunch of different, because like I said, I was taken off the project, and there were other writers that came on, and I read a bunch of different versions of the script, and I didn't, the cube was, I guess that was in none of the versions. That was just in the final movie, and I thought it worked awesome, like bringing that back at the end.
Yeah. So how cool was it when the movie got started filming, and you find out that you have Jamie Foxx and Snoop Dogg in your movie? So how does that up the confidence level you had in this film with their involvement?
Oh, I mean, it's like it's just awesome, because you get to post that on social media, and and it actually has real star. I mean, when it first got optioned, like it was going to be an independent movie, and then it just like it just kind of snowballed into this huge budget Netflix movie with movie stars in it. So,
or like are you surprised just how big the movie is becoming?
Yes. Yeah.
Like
it's just weird. I mean, I came up with the idea. I put my son to bed. I would go on my balcony in the San Fernando Valley, my balcony overlooking the pool. I would smoke a bunch of weed, and I just came up with it one night. And I started tinkering with it. And I remember when I came up with the names, and I remember when I came up with why to call a day shift, and how I came up with that. And then like I'm at the premiere party, and they have the logo floating in a pool, and like Snoop Dogg standing next to the pool, and it's crazy. Like you remember these specific things, and then I remember coming up with the Nazarian brothers, and you're reading these articles that the people love the Nazarian brothers, and they want to have a spinoff, and so.
Oh, no pressure, huh? Get it now. You got to write a spinoff for these guys. That's awesome. So, did you get to meet Snoop Dogg and Jamie Foxx?
I didn't. They were at the premiere. He sat like 2 rows in front of me, and they were all there. They kind of they have their entourages. I wasn't going to be like, hey, I wrote the movie, guys.
Oh, they didn't check with you on the script and be like, hey, what do you think about so-and-so? They didn't contact you about it?
No one cares about the writer.
What's kind of fun. The more I do these things, the more I kind of find out that it's true that the writer is somewhat forgotten when the movie starts filming a little bit.
Yep. Yeah. It's so weird too, because it's like you wrote this movie, and then like all of a sudden you're not part of it anymore. And then down the line, there's another writer, another producer, and they're working on it together. And it's just, they just kind of like, whatever.
That's pretty funny. It's funny that you could go, that you are like the god of the script. You can go to Jamie Foxx, you'd be like, who are you? You're like, I'm the one who created your damn character. I created you. God damn it. So I think, like you said, a great character was Seth. So was he originally, his idea of the character was he the audience surrogate when you first wrote the original draft of his character?
Yeah. He was originally, actually, he wasn't a union guy, he was a young hunter. Like Bud had to, for his like union dues, he had to train Seth. So he was kind of this young hunter that wasn't really cut out for it. He was only in because his uncle, he was a legacy, and his uncle was this badass hunter back in the 70s and 80s. So he wasn't doing shit. So he kind of brought him into the world, and Bud has to train him now. Like it's like I worked in restaurants for years, so I've done the whole like trainee thing. So that was kind
Yeah.
of that. So he kind of bring it, and yeah, and like him training Bud about the world was kind of like our conduit into like all the rules and everything in the world.
So where did the P gag come from?
That was from JJ. He at some point I remember one of my drafts, he's like, have him piss his pants. So I put him in the piss his pants, and I think I took off from there. Like a lot of the jokes I in the final I believe are mostly ad-libbed by Franco and Fox, because a lot of those weren't in the script. So, but the P gag was in there. I think they just kind of took it to new heights.
So once again, as someone who they find as a union man, how did you in your head conceptualize what the union would function like?
Well, it was originally like in the original versions, the union wasn't anything like it was in the later versions. He was just kind of like, he was part of the union. He said he was part of the union. There was a union newsletter. He paid union dues. There were union spots where he would like sell teeth, but it wasn't like it was like he walks into the back of the dry cleaners in the movie, and there's like a whole plant back there and offices. In the original one, it was a concrete room and a guy that like bought the fangs. So it wasn't until Chad Stahelski came along, who made John Wick and everything, that he came along as a producer, because him and JJ were been friends for like 20 years, came up as stuntmen together. When JJ got the script to where he wanted to be with all the action, and he sent it over to Chad, and then Chad came aboard as a producer, and I sat on like a 2-hour call with him, and he loved the union, and everything that the union kind of became was through Chad, because he was like, every time I did a rewrite, he was like, we need more union, put more union in it, more union. So that the whole union thing got expanded bigger and bigger and bigger. And even beyond me, like you can see how much, like even beyond my involvement, you could like the union got much bigger and much more a central part of the movie.
That's pretty cool. And it must be nice that the producer that you have of your movie, the same one who does John Wick, because that movie broke out so big.
Yeah.
When that one came out as well.
Yeah. And you can see the similarities,
Oh, the fight scenes are amazing.
Yeah.
The choreographing.
Yeah.
So, well, also when you're thinking about when you're doing the writing, because once again, it's a great movie, big special effects. Are you thinking in terms of budget when you're writing it the first time, or did you just go all out and hope someone can pay for it?
Honestly, when I first wrote it, I always try to make it I just write what I want to write, but like in my mind, I'm like trying to make it as small budget as possible.
Yeah. Well, apparently that did not work out because it became a big budget.
Yeah. Well, the guy that first optioned it, he was like, I could see that. He's like, we could do it as an independent movie, or we could do it as a huge movie. That's it could have been made like for less than $1 million, and it got made for a lot more than that. So
right. So now that this movie, you got this one in the can, what do you do next? Like, do you have like, now are you writing your work on your next trip? Is it now like demand, like you got to get done by this day to keep up with the demand for you?
No, I'm just writing. I got some other things going around. I'm working on stuff with my manager. I'm working on other stuff. So that's this trying to, write good shit, and hopefully it goes somewhere. I'm reading scripts, I'm reading stories. Day Shift has been going around town for a while, so I've gotten meetings because of it, and I go out for all the genre stuff out there. They want to make new Gremlins movies and new all this stuff, and I go out for it, and I never get it. So,
but that was pre Day Shift coming out, though.
Yeah, that was pre Day Shift coming out. So we'll see what happens now.
So now you can walk around like, it wasn't Big John, like Snoop Dogg with the music in the background when you walk into a room.
I could.
I mean, like I said, because I thought Day Shift really was a fun movie. It had, the vampire tropes were always fun, and I would love to see the world built upon further.
Yeah, I would. And I feel like they left it open that it can be built upon further.
So. I think it did. I mean, the question would be was, the world that it exists in, and all the destruction that the movie is showing, but where it's killing the vampire. I mean, is it explained? Or is it like a Men in Black thing where it's kind of like covered up immediately after the damage is done?
I imagine it's going to be covered. Like, again, like I said, my world was much smaller. There wasn't like the ending like that. But yeah, I mean, you would, I figure that's what the union's there for, that you call them in and they do cover it up. That's why you pay your dues. That's why you have them there.
Well, like I said, I thought it was an absolutely excellent movie, Mr. Tice, and I want to thank you so much for coming on and discussing with me. And when you do the sequel, come right back and talk about it.
I will be there. Thank you so much. It was fun. You too.